Hello, friends, and welcome to To Which Isle. Today, we're going to discuss overthinking. I am your host, Charmaine.
And I am your host, Crystal. Can we redo all that?
Oh, that was perfect.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Which Isle. We are your hosts. I am Charmaine.
And I am Crystal.
And today, we're going to talk about overthinking.
Okay, Charmaine, so what's the definition of overthinking?
Overthinking is to think about something too much or for too long. That's overthinking.
It's pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Yes, yes, it is. But the problem with overthinking is that it actually keeps you from being present. And to fully enjoy life and everything it has to offer, you have to be present. And if you are consumed by something that is taking all of your thoughts, you are not being present.
Yeah, absolutely. Overthinking is probably the biggest hurdle I personally have had to overcome. And it is a struggle every single day, even it's like you start overthinking and you are 20 miles down the road and now your emotions are all tied up in it. You have done convinced yourself that the world is ending. There is just pessimism abounds.
Yes. And that's the problem with it. I've brought a couple of books that I personally like when it comes to working with overthinking or those problem thoughts. And the first one is by Dr. Amen, and it is Your Brain is Always Listening. And they talk about dragons in your brain. Now, of course, we don't actually have dragons in our brain, but if you think about those overthinking thoughts that you might have, those are the dragons that are in your brain and consuming your life with fire. Got to tame them so that you can lead a happy life without being caught up in either the past or the future.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first step is recognition. Mm-hmm. To understand that you are having a toxic thought in the first place.
Right.
Which is and we're not taught, how to regulate our emotions or how to regulate our thoughts very well. Usually, society as a whole pretty much overreacts to everything.
That's exactly right. And it's almost like we've been trained by our parents to do so. Mm-hmm. So the dragons, you have dragons from your past, abandoned, invisible, insignificant dragons, inferior, flawed, anxious, wounded, should and shaming, special, spoiled, entitled, responsibility, angry, judgmental. All of these things affect us. Death leaves overthinking to a lot. Especially if somebody's taken too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. The grief process is exactly that. You are thinking and thinking and thinking. And where you are at in that with grief is you are in a past mindset. Mm-hmm. So you're not in the now. You're not, looking forward. You are all completely looking backwards. And of course, we're human. We are meant to grieve. Mm-hmm. But it's still definitely an overthinking. Right. Or can become an overthinking. For example, no names or anything like that, but I know of a person who has taken their grief of almost losing a child. It was just a terrible accident happened, and this child is fine and everything, but it's like the dwelling on the could have been.
Yeah.
The dwelling on the I almost lost. Mm-hmm. It was almost bad. Mm-hmm. It was almost death. We're stuck
right
there.
you get stuck in a place where you replay it over and over again, where the event might already be past. It's already happened. It is in the past. You can't change it to end a different way by thinking about it further, but we get caught up in those thoughts. The other book I wanted to share is a book that's actually titled Overthinking. It's a Stop Overthinking. And these are a ton of really good habits to develop to try to help you recognize when you're overthinking and then get out of that overthinking bubble. And now, this isn't something that happens within days. God dang it, phone. This isn't something that happens in days. We don't just heal our overthinking thoughts or just stop overthinking. You know what? Today, I'm going to quit overthinking. It doesn't work that way. We actually have to take action and do things that help us stop overthinking. That means get closer to realizing you're overthinking. And then maybe the next step is taking one of the skills in this Stop Overthinking book, like there's 23 techniques in here. It says, I've read it from cover to cover, but do I remember them? No. So managing your time and energy, there's the 3 A's of stress management. Diaries and journals help you manage stress better. And, just unraveling those cognitive distortions that are in the Dragon book.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of recommendations for overthinking. I just brought one book. Mm-hmm. This one is by Sandra Ingerman, and it is How to Heal Toxic Thoughts. It's really, really good. It talks about the alchemy of the soul, how to stop the reaction, how to transmute the energy, transformation tools, things like that. Gosh.
I just realized something. We have the same book. Mine's just mental health related, and yours is spiritually guided. But that's the same thing. Like what you're telling me is in there, is in here, just a different terminology.
Right, exactly. A couple more to go into healing toxic thoughts. And Dr. Wayne Dyer, he is actually passed, I believe, not recently, but within the last couple of years, or a few years. Tony Robbins and Dr. Joe Dispenza. All of those are really good. You can find them on YouTube. They have audiobooks, and they've written a ton of books themselves. Those are all really good references to use. So we have toxic thoughts. We now know that why we are suffering is because we are overthinking. We are overthinking it. So that is your awareness of the situation. Mm-hmm. Awareness of the situation, or the awareness of the toxic thoughts, the overthinking, is the first step.
Yes.
You have to become mindful and aware that that is what is taking place.
It's kind of like, remember when we did our cycles episode and we talked about the cycle of change. You have to have the preparation stage. You have to have, while you're making the changes, you have to have some sort of action before you can get to a maintenance portion where you're maintaining the new habit. And that's what it really comes down to, is being able to stop yourself from overthinking. Okay, overthinking emotionally charges us, and it makes us get all excited in our head. So what we really need to do first is make sure that we're grounded. We have to ground ourselves. It's one of the best techniques of stopping yourself from overthinking. As soon as you realize your mind is going, it's time to ground yourself. Because if you can get into the present moment, that's what grounding is, you can calm down that amygdala reaction, the emotional response that's going on because you're starting to overthink.
Yeah, and this is the perfect point in time to use your breathing techniques. Mm-hmm. Breathing techniques take you out of your head. If you are concentrating on breathing and you are saying in 2, 3, 4, whatever your count is, out 2, 3, 4, breathe in.
And maybe your breathing isn't even that sophisticated. Maybe it's just like, okay, I got to count to 10, but that's what that is. That count of 10 is to get you to deep breathe, because when we shallow breathe, we release cortisol into our bloodstreams, which is a stress hormone, and that stresses us out further. So if you start shallow breathing because you're all excited about something, which is what happens, you're automatically setting yourself up for a stress reaction because you're releasing cortisol into your system.
Yeah, absolutely. So we say recognition, stop the reaction, catch yourself, recognize what you're doing. And the big thing is like, I find is that, you really are going, a mile a minute down a dirt road. You're kicking up dust.
You're about fishtailing is what she is doing.
Yeah, the car is out of control, and the practice of it takes time. Mm-hmm. So this week You're 20 miles down the dirt road fishtailing. The next week, after practicing catching your thoughts, maybe you're only 15 miles down the road before you're fishtailing. Maybe the next week after that, you're not fishtailing anymore. Maybe your car's all bright and shiny, and maybe the road isn't dirt anymore.
Right.
And then maybe, a couple of months down the road, you're still doing it, but you know what? You got down the block in a shiny neighborhood with a brand new car, and then, you know what? Eventually you'll get to that point where you are catching it. You're like, oh, no. That wasn't the thought. That's not the thought that I need to have.
Right. I think my process with because I'm just as guilty as everybody else when it comes to overthinking. I overthink a lot. But what I had to tell myself was that I am working myself. I'm making the choice to overthink something when I do it. And even though it is so unconscious, I'm still making that choice. So making the choice to not do it is hard in the beginning. It took years on certain things for me to stop overthinking. Just going to the grocery store. I could overthink that for a whole week before actually getting to the grocery store. So that's it was something that took years to undo because I had problems going into grocery stores, specifically one aisle in the grocery store, that the smells would just kick up a PTSD response. I would trigger immediately from smelling a smell. And it took a lot of prolonged exposure of going and standing in that aisle and not shopping for anything, but just smelling the smell and allowing it to trigger me till I came down myself, till I learned how to bring that response down so that I could leave the store. Now I can go in the store and go up and down those aisles without any problem, without having even a hesitant thought like, oh my God, what if I smell that smell? I don't even think about it anymore. I can do it. But that's 12 years. That's 12 years that's more than 12 years of not going through that aisle because of a fear response that I had.
Yeah.
That I'm in a grocery store. There's nothing to be afraid of in this aisle. It is just something that my brain triggers me right back to the original what happened, and that isn't true anymore. It's telling me, my brain is telling me a thought that is inaccurate and not truth. But I'm running with the thought like it's truth. And I had to learn to stop running with my thoughts like they were truth.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like we're putting these things in steps because it's a step. So the first step is recognition, awareness. Step 2 is stop the reaction, right? Catch yourself. Yeah. Number 3, transmute the energy. Turn that thought around.
Yeah.
So if it's negative, tell yourself the opposite. Okay. Right now, my biggest toxic thought is it deals with my body dysmorphia. Losing 70 pounds, my brain hasn't caught up with it yet. Right. And so I'm constantly like, I don't look, my body doesn't look the way that I wish that it looked, And so that is my biggest thing. And so instead of telling myself like, oh, you have loose skin, or, oh, you have cellulite, or, oh, your boobies should be perkier, whatever it may be. And it's that now, instead of telling myself those things, I tell myself, I love my tummy. I love my stretch marks. My stretch marks gave me my babies. I love my skin. My skin houses the soul that is perfect. This body is perfect for its purpose. It is a perfect vessel for my perfect soul. I constantly having to tell yourself something positive to counteract the negative. And what do? You do 3 positive things.
Yeah, if I catch myself telling myself even something like I'm stupid, like I left something out on a counter and it went bad overnight. Oh my God, I'm so dumb. Charmaine, you are not dumb. You are a beautiful, wonderful human being that deserves love, and you make mistakes sometimes, but you are not dumb. And I make sure I tell myself at least 2 positive things about myself to undo that one negative thing that I said, because that first positive thing I said undoes the negative thing I said, but I'm not leaving myself with anything positive. So I add in 1 more positive, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. because then that over counteracts it and tells my subconscious to stop doing that, because that's what it's about, is getting your subconscious deep inside to not negative talk you.
Right. So we've talked about how to turn them around, catch them, stop them, turn them around. Now, where do they come from?
That was last show. I find that the negative things I think about myself are all things that I have heard in some form or another, whether they're meant malicious or not. Like, I can tell you that I've never liked my hair. My hair has always been a problem. It's never been kempt. It's always been unruly. It's never done what it was supposed to do, because that's just the way my hair has always been. Where did that come from? That was kind of like growing up. Charmaine, your hair is always a mess. Come here, Charmaine, let me brush out your hair. Your hair is so tangly. It's so unruly. Well, that's why I think my hair is atrocious. That's why I had this like grudge against my hair for a really long time, until I had to start actually showing myself compassion. And I think that's the biggest thing in healing, as you're going through any healing journey, is learning to become self-compassionate, because we give others a lot of compassion without them even asking for it, but we usually beat the hell out of ourselves. If you're anything like me, yeah. But that also comes from just a product of the way you were raised. If you were always slow getting out of the house, maybe you need a little more time. Maybe you were just one of those kids that comes with delays. Well, if your parent was always a rushed parent, they may have rushed you along, and you have maybe become another type of person now. Now you rush around everywhere. Now you need people to be really quick with you, whereas, you know, some other people do get the time that they need to get ready to go out the door or whatnot, whatever the case may be.
Right. So you were basically touched exactly on my next, note here, that every thought that we as a human being has to come from somewhere, and it has to come from what is known, because you can't really think of something that is unknown. Right. So you
don't know how to be a normal child in a normal childhood if you had a really abusive childhood. You can't fathom what normal would look like. Like, I couldn't fathom what normal looked like. I'd go stay the night at friend's house, and I'd wonder deep down inside, do they get abused here like I get abused at home? Is that just something that happens in every house? Like, I didn't understand as a child. Now I understand.
Yeah. Same. So the ideas come from our caregivers. They have impressed upon us. It's kind of like whenever we had the ego talk and the perception talk, stuff like that, that our caregivers impress upon us, their ideas, their beliefs, their, what they have experienced in the world. And then that therefore gives us a place to form ideas from. Yep. And those ideas, get led to believe. Like, mine was, I really, really struggled with not being good enough and being accepted as a child. And that was very much, had to have come from somewhere. And it was being, like scolded or beat, or, being left out or made. There were a lot of times whenever I felt like I was not included. I was very excluded from family. And, it's just because I was different. My mom wasn't around my dad's family anymore. They were divorced. And I really probably preferred my mom's side of the family, to be honest. It was a much calmer household. So our ideas have to come originally from our caregivers, parents, grandparents, adoptive parents, babysitters, aunts, uncles,
It's who you're exposed to. Then when you start going to school, it's the school children you go with and the teachers. Those ideas get impressed upon you. And it's not that they're forcing these ideas on you. These are your own ideas coming from your perception of what is happening to you in your life, what you're learning. And we don't all learn all at once. I've never sat down and read a whole book and then just knew everything that was in that book, obviously,
Right.
as I flip through.
But we have to have that, what is, it has to come from somewhere. The idea has to, you have to see it and you have to perceive it, and then you have to put your own energy into it.
Yeah, it's action. You have to take some sort of action if you want any change.
Right. Okay. So the next thing that I have written down is excuses. You know that you do this thing. So say that you tell someone, hey, you're doing, oh gosh, like I'm drawing a blank on something that's offensive. Say you are someone who has sensory overload, and that you have someone next to you that is, really loud and constantly moving and constantly like shifting or popping or crackling. I don't know. And you tell that person that, hey, it's really bothering me that you're doing this thing. And then they come back with, oh yeah, I know I do that, but, and there's a reason why they can't stop doing it. So that's an excuse, right? That's kind of, same thing, but you do it to yourself too. So you are going along and you're having a toxic thought and you go, oh, well, I can't change that because that's just the way I am.
Like, I'm going to continue to think these toxic thoughts because that's just what I do.
That's just me. I can't change
Right.
because I can't change because of this.
I can't change because actually what it is because it's uncomfortable to change. It causes you to do something other than what just comes normal and natural. And it's growing up. Like, we learn not to say certain words in mixed company because it is inappropriate. Well, it's kind of like the same in that aspect that, we're letting our thoughts tell us everything. That I lost my thought. I was on a train and I derailed. So this is an example of a situation. Feeling rushed in the morning, bumping into a boss in the hallway, unable to answer his questions quickly, he laughs. What are your automatic thoughts? Others are constantly watching me and evaluating me. I have to appear perfectly in control at all and correct at all times. I'm secretly bad at my job and a failure. My emotions are in a panic at like 80%. I feel shame at like 10%. And I feel like I can never relax. I feel like an imposter. So that's like an overthinking, classic overthinking, something that happened to you immediately. Alternative response to that would be, what are your possible distortions? Are you catastrophizing? Are you overinflation? Is it overinflating it? Are you overinflating the situation bigger than it is? Are you focusing on the negative and mind reading? Probably. So I feel a lot more comfortable and at ease when you can restructure thoughts like that. So it's literally being able to tell yourself, I don't have much evidence that people are judging me, even if they do occasionally notice my work. I might exaggerate how closely my boss actually monitors me. I might interpret a laugh as being more menacing than it is. So all these other things you can be telling yourself other than this automatic thought that is, I'm secretly bad at my job and a failure. If you're constantly telling yourself you're secretly bad and a failure, you're constantly going to be overthinking any situation that makes you feel inadequate for any reason. And just because something might make you feel a way doesn't mean that that's the way it was intended at all, unless you ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So like one of the things that I really do is try to get out of my head when I'm overthinking. I've done the recognition. I've stopped the reaction. I've turned the thoughts around. Now it's time to make myself, because I have a tendency to like try to go back into that thinking, and so it's now a redirection.
Right.
I redirect my I redirect my attention to something else.
You are actually doing what you're doing is you're constructively distracting yourself with something that you enjoy. Like you should always, if you catch yourself doing this, you should reward yourself for catching yourself by positively like giving yourself some reinforcement, and then by doing something that makes you feel good. So for me, if I catch myself overthinking, usually I spend time in the garden. I put my hands in the dirt. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel like I'm creating something if I'm planting, or, you know, usually my plants are coming from seeds. So I'm creating life.
Right.
But sorry, I was animated, I know.
Basically what I wrote down is,
life.
what I wrote down is to get out of your head and to try body and awareness practices. So meditation, yoga, exercise, take a walk in nature, work in the garden.
I was going to say something about that earlier. And it's like, you know, everybody tells you to stop and breathe. I don't know how many times I've been in therapy and told to stop and breathe, or you need to do something fun for yourself and distract, and you need to meditate. And I never realized how important it was until you try to overcome an overthinking situation, because that is the only thing that pulls you out of it is that breath. And if you're not practicing when you are not in crisis, you are never going to remember to deeply breathe when you are in crisis. It just slips your mind.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm glad that I haven't had a panic attack in a really long time.
You know, and once you do start healing and you start noticing that in particular, that, man, I haven't had an anxiety attack, I haven't panicked once in the last week, that's when you start really noticing that life can improve just by making those small changes and sticking to them.
I think my last full-on panic attack was probably in 2020.
2020 in January.
Yeah.
Was it January? I wonder where we were at.
That was a panicking situation for sure. Yes, we were. What else have we got?
Well, I really don't have anything because I didn't have any of my regular notes. But I do think we covered a lot on overthinking, and these, of course, are just ideas on things that you can do to try to overcome your own overthinking, because I also know, we both know, that not every way is going to work for every person. You have to find your own way through the healing path. And part of that is just listening to other people and what they've done and what has worked for them, because that's my whole healing process has been a product of, oh, that worked for you, let me try that. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But trying it is all that counts.
Yeah.
And trying it several times, too, because I can tell you the first time I did deep breathing or meditation, it wasn't perfect. It was maybe near meditation because it was really hard for me to shut off my brain, and I felt like I was doing it wrong. Well, the only thing that makes you think like there is no right way to meditate. Not one person can clear every thought out of their head. It's a process and a practice. And that practice is what you're doing. It isn't perfect every time. Sometimes when I do yoga, my balance isn't there and I can't do a tree pose without my foot on the ground. Sometimes I have great balance and I can stick my foot way up in the air. It's different every time, and it's the same thing with these skills that we talk about, whether it's meditation or a grounding technique or gardening or any of that. It's trial and error on your behalf. You have to put in the action to decide whether or not it works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And that, even though, we both say there is no time,
but there is no time. Time is a farce.
But there is a 3D world construct that we must adhere to, and so whereas the healing is instantaneous in the spirit realm, it is not so instantaneous here. Therefore, it takes time. it took, and how old are you? Like how
Right.
long have you been suffering? How long, if you're 50 years old and you were, you started experiencing trauma at a year old, you've been going through trauma for 50
whole life.
years.
Your whole life.
It's going to take you time to unwrite that programming.
Right.
Because that's what it is. It's all, I mean, like, again, I go to the Matrix a lot, but it's programming. Like
Neo.
it's you've got to go in and delete the program.
Exactly. And a lot of the programs that we got as children were damaged programs from the past, from our parents. I mean, from the Depression. There are parents that went through the Depression. Their kids grew up with a certain set of habits, and that rubbed off on their kids, which would be us. It's a progress that has happened that we have learned that we need to unlearn. And I think
Lack
once
mentality from depression, yeah.
Oh my gosh, the lack mentality. We should do a show just on that alone. But yes, that lack mentality. If you are thinking in the lack, if all you ever think of is what you don't have, what you need still, you will never have an abundant life. My life didn't start becoming more abundant until I started telling myself every day, I am abundant and I am wealthy.
So, like, hoarding would be like an extreme example of lack mentality.
Yes, yes. The fear of not having that item when I need it, if I should possibly need it in the future. And that goes to overthinking too, because you're overthinking everything now. Like, oh, I can use this. I know I can pick up a piece of cardboard and tell you 60 different uses in my craft room I could use it for. But it doesn't mean I need to keep every piece of cardboard. It just doesn't.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm positive. I've had to throw away a lot of cardboard.
I know how you like your cardboard.
I do. I build with it.
Yes, you do. But you order enough Amazon packages.
That's right. I have to tell myself there's always more Amazon coming. Always. Okay, so I think we've covered overthinking pretty well.
Yeah, I think so.
And of course, as we always say, and you better say it because I always screw it up. I really do. Go ahead. Say
Okay.
it. I can't.
All right. And as always, take what resonates and just leave the rest.
I would have said resounds again. I just would have.
You've got that programming stuck in your head.
It's a bad programming. Bad programming.
But you trained yourself that way. See, and then you just said, I always do it. So now you're going to keep doing it.
I know.
You just put that out there.
I just put it into the universe. See, I do it to myself.
That was not necessarily a toxic thought, but that was like word vomit.
I was attracting what I don't want.
You were attracting what you don't want. And there is no anti in the universe.
That's
The
right.
universe does not understand does not understand not.
Yeah.
It only understands that
You
there is
say,
a want and there is
I
a
don't want
thing.
traffic. The universe hears traffic. Okay, gotcha. Here, boom, traffic.
The universe says, abundance is, a lack mindset. I don't have any money. So therefore you don't have any money.
I did it today. I said, sometimes this street's totally clogged up because there's a train. And we got to the end and there was a train literally parked on the street. And she went, you just did that. And I went, shut up.
All right, everyone. Until next time, light and love.
Light and love.
Bye-bye.